Hello, everyone. I'm John Coleman from ApocatastasisInstitute, an institute for the humanities, an alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. This live broadcast, thanks to your donations and recording, is the April 11th, 2025 edition of News with the Fetz, with Dr. Jim Fetzer bringing us up to speed on events here in these states and the world. Before I turn things over to Dr. Fetzer, we have so much to get into here. Just one announcement, I think very pertinent to the sorts that would watch this show. And that is this very evening, April 11th, we're going to have Mr. Clint Richardson present for, I believe, 4 hours on foreign trade zones and sovereignty and topics related to that, international law. So you can find out about that on our website, which is down below. Also in the description is Dr. Fetzer's site, where you can find out all of his books and his work in general. With that being said, Dr. Fetzer, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Oh, John, it's a delight to be back. There we go. Excellent. Zelensky appears to be very consistent in wanting to avoid allowing any territory to be taken or any troop cuts, which is not going to go down well with the Russians. Here we have a report. Ukraine will not agree to reduce its army or recognize Russian-occupied land in future peace talks. Our priority is a strong military, no reductions, only modernization. Hal Turner observes. He again seals the fate of the entire country. It seems to me personally, and unless he agrees to Russia's terms, it's clear to most people that Russia will simply continue to smash Ukraine until it surrenders or no longer exists. I think this man is either detached from reality or suicidal, perhaps both. I think he's got it right. Meanwhile, Trump has astonished everyone by claiming the U.S. is in direct nuclear attacks with Iran. In a surprise statement, Trump says he's been holding direct talks with Iran, had a very big meeting involving high officials and planned for this coming Saturday, the day after tomorrow. The declaration was unexpected, given that as recently as this weekend, Iran repeated it would not hold talks with Washington so long as maximum pressure by the White House remains in place. Iran has also rejected the idea talks could happen while Trump threatens to bomb Iran. The other surprise, Trump made the claim while hosting PM Netanyahu in the Oval Office. Israeli leader has applauded Trump's return to maximum pressure, hinted at Israeli military action if Iran is perceived as pursuing a nuclear bomb. And just a comment, we had very recently, as last week, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, reporting to Congress that Iran, it's a consensus of the intelligence community, including CIA, Iran is not pursuing nuclear weapons and does not possess any nuclear weapons, which makes it all the more ludicrous, even absurd, that Trump is threatening to bomb Iran because of a non-existent nuclear weapons program. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, Trump continues. We're dealing with him directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe they're going through surrogates. You're not dealing direct, or you're only dealing with other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly. I think everyone agrees doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious, meaning the bombing. And the obvious, the bombing, is not something I want to be involved with, or frankly, Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. But of course, Israel wants the United States to attack Iran. That's the whole idea. Continuing to speak about potential future strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. We're going to see if it we can avoid it. But it's going to be very troublesome territory. Hopefully, the talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. But remember, Trump, there was a nuclear deal negotiated with Iran before. Iran was conforming to it. They had inspectors there. Iran was in complete compliance, and nevertheless, Trump withdrew. So how could anyone take for granted an agreement with Trump would be meaningful? Meanwhile, Trump repeats his threat to use military force if Iran does not agree. This is bullying, thuggish behavior, John. This is unsuitable of a great nation. Trump Wednesday repeated the threat to use military force if Iran did not agree to end its nuclear program, saying Israel would play a key role in any military action. Trump said Iran would not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, which it doesn't aspire and does not possess. And if it declined to stop development efforts, military action could follow. I'm not asking for much, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. And why, John, is he still talking about it when the ITC community has assured him they don't have a nuclear weapon and they're not pursuing one? If it requires military, we're going to have military. Israel will obviously be the leader of that, which, by the way, would lead to the annihilation of Israel, have no doubt. He declined to address when military action could begin. I don't want to be specific, but when you start talks, if they're going along well, I'd say the conclusion would be when I think they're not going well. He made the surprise announcement about direct talks Saturday, warning Iran would be in great danger if the talks were unsuccessful. Again, bullying, threatening behavior. This is actually even against international law. The UN Charter. Iran, which pushed against Trump demand in recent weeks that indirect talks would be held in Oman. On Tuesday, Iran's state media said the talks would be led by Iran's foreign minister and the U.S. presidential envoy. The U.S. and Iran held indirect talk during former President Biden, but made little progress. The last known negotiations were back under Barack Obama, who spearheaded the 2015 international nuclear deal that Trump later abandoned. Meanwhile, and John, this is equally disconcerting. Trump and Netanyahu reaffirmed their vision for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Gross violation of international law, UN Charter, Geneva Conventions. Ethnic cleansing is a crime against humanity. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu met at the White House, reaffirmed their desire. Trump as well as Netanyahu for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, both claiming there are other countries willing to take them. Trump said it would be a good thing for the U.S. to take over and control Gaza. You know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, he told reporters. I think it's something we'd be involved in, having a peace force like the U.S. there controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Well, maybe not for the Palestinians who live in Gaza, who don't want to go to other countries, who have a legacy and entitlement to these lands that goes back thousands of years, unlike the Israelis, who only showed up on the shores in 1948. In fact, most of the world regards Israel as occupied Palestinian territory. The president said if the Palestinians were moved to different countries, they'd create a freedom zone. You can call it a freedom zone, a free zone, where people aren't going to be killed every day. But they're only being killed every day because of Trump's support for the genocide. Netanyahu framed the idea of expelling them as voluntary. We're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil control by Hamas Hamas in Gaza and enabling the people of Gaza freely make a decision to go wherever they want. As long as they're out of Gaza or dead, John, Bibi will be happy. Your thoughts?
Yes, well, the murder, the genocide continues now for a year and a half, and I was marveling at this, looking at, well, first of all, looking at Gaza, which is about the size of Manhattan. It's not a huge territory. It's not even a large territory. What am I saying? It's remarkable how those people can still even be there. I mean, it looks like I would say something out of the beginning of Terminator or something. The whole thing has been near enough to be plowed under, and yet people are somehow surviving there. But it's amazing. I was thinking this morning, in any case, it's amazing the power of the Zionists. It's almost preternatural. The influence that this clique has on world events, and to snap their fingers, as you pointed out, Dr. Fetzer, and to have the American executives of both parties jump and say, "How high, sir?" Um, it's remarkable. And just finally, um, part of that control structure, getting back to the Epstein stuff and certain related things I was getting into in my own preparation this morning about the use of compromise and the use of trauma and so forth. Uh, it is amazing how complex this evil can be, that you can control through fear, through blackmail and intimidation. You can control so many of the world's politicians. The power of the Zionists is remarkable, unfortunately.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, they tell you the Houthis attack ships, but they never tell you why. None of the Caitlin Johnstone, simply excellent. None of the people at Bloody Drums War in Yemen, because the Houthis are attacking ships, will tell you why the Houthis started attacking ships. The pundits won't say, and the people don't know. After 2 weeks of interacting with those who support Trump's war, and that is his war in Yemen, I can confidently say none of them know why the war is happening. They know it has something to do with the Houthis attacking ships in the Red Sea, but they have no idea why those attacks began happening in the first place. They assume it's because the Houthis are just plain evil and want to attack ships, or because Iran ordered them to do it in order to exert control over the Middle East. The words terrorists, for example, come up a lot. They legitimately do not know it's a blockade aimed at halting Israel's genocidal atrocities in Gaza, and that all attacks ceased while a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was in effect. They have no idea. Ansarallah only announced the Red Sea blockade would resume after Trump and Netanyahu actively collaborated to sabotage a ceasefire and resume starving Gaza, or that they hadn't even resumed attacks yet when Trump began bombing them. Here's Greg Bookmer, my latest piece in Mondo Heist. Yemen is acting responsibly to stop genocide, and the U.S. is bombing them for it. They do not know the Houthis succeeded in causing an 85% reduction in shipping to Israel's Point Eilat, putting effective pressure on the Netanyahu regime to end the Gaza Holocaust. They do not know Trump's reason for bombing Yemen is the same as Biden's, because the U.S. empire believes it should be allowed to back Israel's genocide with no consequences or resistance of any kind. They're supporting a war without knowing why. This is possible because they not only don't know why the war is happening, they don't care. They would support literally anything Trump did for any reason whatsoever, because they are mindless, infantile cultists and are not free-thinking adults. They don't need to know why Trump is bombing Yemen. All they need is to be assured in a confident-sounding tone the people he is bombing deserve to be bombed. As long as they receive that assurance, they don't ask any questions. They don't even bother doing seconds worth of research. All they care about is supporting whatever Trump and his pundits tell them to support. Here's a Caitlin with a map. When you see how effective the Houthis been at using Yemen's critical location to shut down Red Sea traffic, you understand why the U.S. spent years backing an horrific military campaign, trying to get rid of them. But only a minuscule amount of American shipping passes here, whereas a huge amount of Israeli. What keeps blowing my mind is they're still supporting Trump's war, even after seeing this leaked signal chat with Trump's own team privately acknowledge that it isn't really necessary. They know the chat exists. They saw Trump official talking about how there's no real reason for the bombing, that the bombing needs to happen right now, and at most they can be used to send a message, whatever that means. But they've been aggressively defending Trump's war this whole time anyway. Really, all it would need to happen for the Houthis to permanently stop attacking ships for Trump to use the immense amount of leverage White House has over Israel, force Netanyahu into a permanent ceasefire. All he's got to do is cut off American supplies of weapons and money. That's how he could make himself into the president of peace Tulsi has declared him to be, instead of another disgusting warmonger advancing all the long-standing neocon war agendas his political faction pretends to oppose. But that's all it is, a pretense. They're all phonies and frauds. A bunch of George W. Bush Republicans LARPing as Ron Paul libertarians, bleeding human livestock, cheering for every act of military slaughter they're instructed to cheer for. And let me say, John, this is just disgusting. Your thoughts?
I very much commend the Houthis and the Yemenis in the little way that they're able to do for showing solidarity to their fellow Arabs and their fellow Muslims. It's a shame Saudi Arabia, which should have the leadership in the Islamic world, all things considered, is such a sellout towards the globalists and has so trimmed their sails along with other nations. I mean, Iraq is basically a slave state of the United States. Jordan has taken in a lot of the Palestinians. Egypt is just as bad as the Saudis. They play games. But the Yemenis, the little bit they have, at least the faction that's controlling most of Yemen, the little bit they're able to do, they're doing it. So that's commendable that they would fight tyranny so much and have such solidarity.
Yep. You're absolutely right. They're the most honorable force in the world today, having declared war on Israel, the only Muslim country to have done so. This may not be what they were originally anticipating, but a reset of the global economy is definitely here. Over the past few years, tremendous amount of buzz about an imminent reset of the global economy. Well, what we're currently witnessing may not look like what they were anticipating, what they had in mind, but a reset is definitely here. Trillions were invested to set up the global supply chains we have today. I've always argued we should have never allowed ourselves to become so dependent on goods that are made elsewhere, and making more things in this country is a goal that every admin should pursue. Unfortunately, you can't just reverse decades of investment and construct entirely new supply chains overnight. For example, it costs around $10 billion to build a manufacturing facility to make computer chips. Construction time can run 3 to 5 years. So anyone who thinks we can just hit a reset button and magically make things better is simply being unrealistic. We just witnessed the largest tariff increase in history. Many companies had invested enormous amounts into global supply chains that were carefully calculated to give them a competitive advantage, have just had their businesses ruined. At the end of last week, I wrote the global economy has already been moving in the wrong direction for quite some time. And now a massive amount of fuel is being poured onto that fire. I do not believe the global economy is going to be able to handle a shock of this magnitude. Wall Street was certainly not ready to have someone press the reset button. At this point, investors are selling first and asking questions later. The tariffs have sent shockwaves to global financial markets, raising fears of a worldwide economic downturn and sharp price hikes across sectors in the world's biggest economic market. The Trump admin may be playing a game of chicken with trading partners, but market participants aren't willing to wait around for the results. Michael Arone, investment expert at State Street Global, said investors are selling first and asking questions later. Hopefully, you were able to get out of the market before the carnage started. Many are hoping Trump will reverse course after witnessing what's happened on Wall Street. But we're told there will be no turning back. Trump admin official message that tariffs are to be implemented are not up for negotiation across a Sunday political shows. However, Mike Whitney writes, Trump concocted the tariff hoax to decouple with China. The Trump debt extravaganza was never about trade deficits, reindustrialization, or bringing jobs back to America. It was always about China. Now, Trump has either eased or lifted tariffs on 90 other countries. We can see what's actually going on. Trump is using the tariff smokescreen to implement his decoupling policy, a strategy designed to isolate, encircle, and eventually crush the People's Republic of China. That's the motive driving the policy. The tariffs were just a means to an end. Here from CNN. President Donald Trump announced a complete 3-month pause on all the reciprocal tariffs that went into effect at midnight, with the exception of China. A stunning reversal from a president who had insisted historically high tariffs were here to stay. But enormous tariffs will remain on China, the world's second largest economy. In fact, Trump said they'll be increased to 125% from 104% after China announced additional retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. earlier Wednesday. All other countries that were subject to reciprocal tariff rates will see the rates go back to the universal 10%, he said. China is being targeted because China's meteoric rise and explosive growth has made it a threat to America's global hegemony. That's why China has entered Washington's crosshairs by imposing prohibitive 125% tariffs on Chinese exports. Trump is indicating that the era of integrated markets in a globalized system is over. The world is being redivided into warring blocs by wealthy capitalists in the West who cannot compete with China's government-led model that controls the nation's critical industries and recycles massive profits back into vital infrastructure, education, R&D, and technology. The West, highly financialized market, which increasingly depends on skimming the cream off toxic securities and stock buybacks, cannot remake itself into a manufacturing powerhouse willing to compete with China on a level playing field. Instead, it must use its waning influence to jolt the system with unexpected fireworks, the tariffs, sending shockwaves through the system and panic through the markets. These contrived spectacles, bordering on economic terrorism, all part of Uncle Sam's repertoire, used to subdue the opposition and maintain Washington's tenuous grip on power. But do they work? Some seem to think so. Here's Trump with his billionaire friends discussing the money they made when he eased the tariffs and markets soared. Meanwhile, Senate Republicans express relief after Trump pauses tariff plans. As news that Trump was easing up on most of his tariffs reached a luncheon of Senate Republicans Wednesday, the room reacted with relief cheers and smiles. Remember, the president conducts foreign policy with the advice and consent of the Senate, so senators have a keen interest in foreign policy. It kept an extraordinary 24 hours in Washington in which GOP senators increasingly confronted the Trump admin with worries about the economic impact of the sweeping tariff strategy. In Senate hearings and interviews with reporters, GOP concern over Trump policies had run unusually high, amounting to a rare break with a president they have otherwise championed. Lawmakers had reason to worry. The stock market had been in a volatile tumble for days. Some economists were worrying that the plans could lead to a recession. As Republicans heard from businesses back home, worried about our president's plans and navigated the political ramifications of crossing Trump, they engaged in a delicate two-step, urging the president to engage in negotiations, warning of the economic fallout of long-term tariffs, and shifting to praise for the president's economic vision. That strategy seemed to pay off Wednesday when Senator Roger Marshall broke the news to the room full of fellow Republicans that Trump would back down on tariffs on most nations except China for 90 days. It really lightened up the lunch discussions that Senator Mike Rounds, a South Dakota Republican, and there were cheers, clapping, and lots of smiles. Senator Ron Johnson, my own senator, whom I admire and have met, said he was relieved by the announcement, and we'd all rather see the market rise than fall. John, your thoughts?
Well, in the big picture, to your initial points, Dr. Fetzer, about the instability of the global markets, I'm surprised things have held together because the powers that be never fixed the deeper problems that happened in 2008. They just kicked the can down the road. So it's interesting to see how this is shaking up a system which was already, it's almost like a shock test, a system which was already rickety. I'm optimistic about the tariffs in general if Trump sticks with them and really implements them. But to your point, you can see how games are being played, and it's in this case, I'm afraid, fitting right into the neocons' palm, just like all the Israel stuff and all the Middle East stuff in Ukraine in our previous recordings. I'm making my way through Foreign Affairs, which is the bi-monthly publication of the CFR, and you can see these people are obsessed with the war with China that they believe must happen. And whilst it's good to keep China at arm's reach, I'm wary. My final point on this is that I'm wary of how something good, I believe, like tariffs, can be used the neocons as concerns China.
Very good, John. Very good. Meanwhile, in Congress, with the release of JFK files, Representative Luna featured Oliver Stone and Jim DiEugenio to address what is or isn't there. Alas, they referred to information that was roughly 60 years old about whether or not Lee was in the sixth floor of the book depository because women on the stairs who should have seen him if he were going up or down did not see him, and about the blowout to the back of the head, where they seem to be at a loss as to how to account for the failure of it to be displayed by the House Select Committee when it investigated the assassination of JFK and Martin Luther King. Many of us felt their performance was pathetic. Others, that they'd actually betrayed the JFK research community. I mean, after all, how simple would it have been to refute the Warren Commission report, which claimed there were 3 and only 3 shots fired from above and behind, one hitting Jack in the back, another hitting Connolly in the back, a third hitting Jack in the back of the head, killing him, to go back to the first announcement of his death from Acting Press Secretary Malcolm Kilduff, who pointed to his right temple, explaining it was a simple matter of a bullet right through the head. Or on radio and television, such as NBC, that whole afternoon. I'm talking about 22 November 1963. They were reporting in great detail 2 shots. One, a small, clean puncture wound to the throat, where Malcolm Perry, MD, who'd perform a simple tracheostomy incision through the wound, explained 3 times during a press conference held after Malcolm Kilduff's announcement of his death that it was a wound of entry, that the bullet was coming at him. And that shot that entered the right temple that blew up his brains back of his head was also widely discussed, attributed to Admiral George Berkeley, the president's personal physician, both of which, of course, had been fired from in front. So are Eugenio and Oliver unaware of this taking place? What that means is, because the 3 shots reported by the Secret Service and the FBI were all bona fide, we already have 4 shots to JFK, except none of them were fired by Lee Oswald, who was in the doorway of the book depository at the time the motorcade passed by. So we got the shot to the back, which was fired from the top of the county records building by a Dallas deputy sheriff. We have the shot to the throat, fired from inside the triple underpass by an Air Force expert acting on behalf of the Joint Chiefs. And then, after the driver, William Greer, pulled the limousine to a left and to a halt, we had a shot to the back of the head fired from the Dow Tex by an anti-Castro Cuban. Jack slumped forward. Jack eased him back up when he was hit in that right temple by a shot fired from the intersection of the triple underpass and the picket fence by the mafia shooter. And where David Vanek is now determined that there was a 3rd shot to the side of the head, near simultaneous with a shot to the right temple fired by the Israeli assassin. Not only that, they didn't even talk about, while mentioning the blowout to the back of the head observed by not just the physician at Parkland, but tons of witnesses in Dealey Plaza and the medical technicians at Bethesda, but that it was increased by Commander Humes, who was in charge of the autopsy, taking a cranial saw to the skull of JFK and enlarging the wound to make it look like something that might have been an effect of a shot from behind if you lean way forward, which was done in front of 2 witnesses, including Thomas Evan Robinson, who was the mortician who would prepare the body for the funeral. And yet, when the House Select Committee reinvestigated in 77, 78, it reconstituted the back of the head, where there's no blowout now, and where the entry wound that had been determined by the pathologists at Bethesda about here had been moved upward 4 inches to the top of the head with no justification whatsoever, and where later in the evening, as this report from the Secret Service and the FBI began to trickle in, Frank McGee, who is nobody's fool, says, "This is incongruous. How can the man have been shot from in front, from behind?" Oliver Stone and Jim DiEugenio didn't even mention these obvious facts. Meanwhile, last night, an interview with Stu Peters of me about the JFK case, where I made points similar to those I've just reviewed and a whole lot of others, was broadcast, where Stu gave me 21 minutes to present. And I covered a lot of territory, John. You can find it on my BitChute channel, Jim Fetzer, the JFK PSYOP, and I'd like to believe it's going to make an impact. Whereas I emphasize there, if Representative Luna, who invited Oliver Stone and DiEugenio to address her committee, wants to get to the bottom of the matter, there are 5 witnesses she should call. David W. Manick, MD, PhD, the leading witness on the medical evidence in the assassination of JFK. Doug Horn, who is a leading expert on the Assassination Records Review Board, its discoveries and findings. John P. Costello, PhD, the leading expert on the Zapruder film and how it was edited to conceal the true causes of death. Larry Rovira, the leading expert on the evidence that has now been released about Mexico City and the limo stop, which was edited out of the film when it was reconstructed, and myself, the leading expert on who was responsible and why. John, if she wants to get to the heart of the matter, that's what she should do for the benefit of the American people and the integrity of her own inquiry. She can do no less. John.
Thank you for that, Dr. Fetzer. And for the audience, it's worth remembering, why talk about this event that happened 60 years ago, thereabouts. As Dr. Fetzer has pointed out in previous recordings, this is really the first example of this present regime of tyranny, and when America really falls to a criminal clique. And so to learn that origin will set up one subsequent study of things even until today. For the audience, I will also put after this broadcast the link to Mr. Peters' show with Dr. Fetzer here. I will put that right under Dr. Fetzer's site, and I look forward to catching that, and I'm sure the audience does as well. Anything else there, Dr. Fetzer, to bring up here?
No, John, I'm just delighted you're continuing this series, and I'm very pleased to be a participant.
Excellent. Thank you. And it's an honor to have you, Dr. Fetzer. Just one reminder again that we do have this evening from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. to 10 Eastern, Mr. Clint Richardson presenting on trade zones and legality, sovereignty, and all of these topics. I think that would be of interest to the audience of this series. And you can find out about that on our website. And indeed, be sure to check out Dr. Fetzer's interview and his website. To one and all, thank you for your attention. And indeed, Dr. Fetzer, thank you for your generous appearance today.
My great pleasure. Thank you, John.